A bad job does not only take your hours, it takes the first thought in the morning and the last thought before sleep. It takes the 10 quiet minutes in the shower that used to belong to no one. It takes the tone of your voice when your partner asks how the day went. And it takes the patience you are going to spend on your own children. By the time most people notice what is happening, the job has already moved in. It is not a visitor. It is living in the house. It has a key. It decides which rooms you are allowed to enter after 6 in the evening, and it follows you into the ones you thought were still yours. That invasion is the real cost of employment in a dysfunctional environment, and almost nobody is compensated for it because almost nobody is willing to name it out loud. If you are watching this, the odds are that you already know you cannot leave. The rent is fixed. The insurance is tied to the badge. The market is tight. The visa is attached to the employer. The dependents are real. The savings are thin. The career timing is wrong. The fear of a gap on the resume is louder than the fear of another Monday in that building. The reason is legitimate, and the advice to simply quit is being given by people who have never had to do math at a kitchen table at midnight. You are not weak for staying. You are making a rational trade inside constraints you did not choose. So the question is not whether to leave. The question is how to stop the place from taking more than it has already taken while you are still inside it. Before any of that, one correction. The phrase protecting your peace has been emptied out by wellness content and turned into a soft instruction to calm down. That is not what this is. Protecting your peace is not about becoming calmer. It is about becoming harder to destabilize inside a system that benefits from your emotional exhaustion. A calm person in an unstable environment is still absorbing the environment. A hard to destabilize person has built internal architecture that refuses to transmit the environment inward at full volume. One is a mood, the other is a structure. There are 8 parts to the structure, and every one of them is something you stop giving the workplace, not something you start doing harder. The first is the refusal to file structural problems under personal failure. When a project is chaotic because leadership has changed direction 3 times and then held a meeting in which everyone pretended the original direction never existed, that chaos is not a measurement of your capacity. When a deadline is impossible because the scope was never defined and the person who should have defined it is now asking why it is not done, that is not a measurement of your discipline. When the project had no owner until it failed and then suddenly has your name on it, that is not a measurement of your competence. That is the building failing on top of you and you happen to be standing under it. Almost every painful day at work is made painful by the quiet habit of taking inherited dysfunction and writing it down under your own name. Bad systems need shock absorbers, and the shock absorber is always the person closest to the work. The defense is a strict vocabulary. This is poor planning. This is shifting expectations. This is politics. This is understaffing. This is a decision made 3 levels above me and dropped down without context. These labels are not excuses. They are the line between responsibility you can actually influence and wreckage that was going to happen no matter who sat in your chair. Once the line is drawn, the day gets lighter. You stop apologizing for outcomes that were never yours to produce. You stop carrying someone else's mismanagement in your chest. The second is the reduction of emotional access. Physical access is the easy version, the meeting on the calendar, the ping in the inbox. Most people already manage that. Emotional access is different. Emotional access is who is allowed to reach into your internal state and change it. Access is who can change your internal weather. A 3-word Slack message from a particular manager can ruin an entire afternoon, even though the words themselves are neutral. A rescheduled one-on-one becomes a 6-hour interrogation of your own future. A shorter reply where there used to be a longer one becomes evidence of a verdict nobody has actually delivered. None of these interpretations are confirmed. All of them are being written inside your head by the tired part of your brain on behalf of people who have told you nothing. The defense is delayed interpretation. When something lands, you wait. You stay with the observable fact. The meeting was moved. That is all that happened. You refuse to fill the silence with a story your exhaustion is writing. You do not mind read. You do not rehearse imagined conversations in the car on the way home. You do not owe your manager an internal monologue on top of the work you already did. Your head is not a second inbox for them to leave messages in. The third is the refusal to obey fake urgency, because this is quietly eating more peace than any other single mechanism in modern work. Everything is on fire. Everything is circled back on. Everything needs a quick sync. A task that nobody mentioned on Monday is an emergency by Wednesday because someone 2 levels up asked a question in a hallway. A deliverable that was never prioritized becomes the only thing that matters for 48 hours and then disappears completely once the pressure from above has moved elsewhere. Fake urgency is contagious. It enters through the nervous system before it ever reaches the task list, and once it is inside, it teaches the body that every notification is a threat. The defense is a strict separation between a real priority and someone else's disorganization. A real priority has a reason that can be stated out loud, a deadline that existed before the panic, and consequences that would still matter if the loudest person in the room took the day off. Someone else's disorganization is a priority only because a manager forgot something, mismanaged a stakeholder, or is performing visibility for a superior. You can still do the work. You are not refusing the task. What you are refusing is to host the adrenaline of the request inside your body for the rest of the day. A ping is not a crisis. A ping is a ping. The person who stops confusing the two recovers hours of peace every week that were previously being donated, free of charge, to other people's poor planning. The fourth is the construction of a work self that is real but not fully exposed, and this is where the advice has to get less polite. Modern workplaces spent a decade encouraging what they called authenticity, and a lot of kind people took them at their word. That word was a trap. Authenticity in a political environment is inventory. Every piece of personal information you share becomes a handle, a place where someone can grip you in a future conflict you cannot yet see. The coworker who knows about your financial stress is the coworker who, 6 months later, mentions that stress in a performance conversation as concern. The manager who knows about your health condition begins, without ever deciding to, letting that condition quietly color the review. The team that knows about a difficult season at home reads any quiet day as evidence of something larger. Information does not stay where you put it. It migrates toward whoever benefits from having it, and the benefit is rarely yours. The correction is not secrecy. Secrecy is loud and generates its own suspicion. The correction is privacy, and privacy is the quiet discipline of deciding in advance which parts of your life are not relevant to the working relationship and keeping them out of it without drama, without apology, without cover stories. Noted. Let me confirm. I will get back to you. Sounds good. I will take a look. These are not cold phrases. They are containers. A professional self lives inside them, intact. When a coworker asks how things are going at home, the answer is fine, thank you, and the answer is complete. When a manager fishes for a vulnerability disguised as a check-in, the hook comes back empty. Concern at work is often reconnaissance. You do not have to be rude. You only have to stop filling the bucket. The fifth is the hardest to accept because it requires letting go of the belief that the workplace should be fair. A large portion of adult workplace suffering comes from the ongoing expectation of fairness in the way every violation of it feels like a personal betrayal. The cleaner view is harder, and the cleaner view is the one that protects you. Workplaces are not built on fairness. They are built on optics, hierarchy, convenience, and politics. And those four things shift from week to week depending on who is under pressure and whose career is currently being watched. Fairness sometimes shows up inside that system. It shows up as a side effect, not as a principle. And here's the part most advice refuses to say out loud. Many workplaces do not merely fail at fairness, they preserve ambiguity on purpose because ambiguity is useful power. Vagueness is not a bug, it is the operating system. A manager who never quite tells you where you stand keeps you working harder for a verdict that will never arrive. A leader who never fully documents a decision keeps the option of remembering it differently later. Selective memory from people with more power is not an accident, it is a feature. Once you see that clearly, you stop waiting for the organization to recognize your contributions. You stop hoping the truth will emerge on its own. You replace fairness with exposure management. Exposure is how easily you can be blamed, trapped, mischaracterized, or assigned the consequences of a decision you did not make. You reduce it by making ambiguity impossible. You send the follow-up email that pins the meeting's agreement in writing. You ask the clarifying question in the channel, not in the hallway. You keep a quiet log of requests and timelines. You notice which colleagues redistribute blame outward when things go wrong, and you make sure every interaction with them leaves a paper trail. None of this is adversarial. It is structural honesty in a system that does not always remember accurately on purpose. Peace is not protected by fairness. Peace is protected by making yourself harder to rewrite. The sixth is the refusal to perform emotionally for the job, and this drains more energy from the kindest people in the building than any other demand. Professionalism and emotional performance are not the same thing, and the workplace has been blurring them for years. Professionalism is showing up on time, doing the work, communicating clearly, treating people with basic respect. Emotional performance is the layer on top of that. It is the exclamation marks on replies that did not need them. The forced enthusiasm in a meeting about a project everyone quietly knows is failing. The grateful response to feedback that was unfair. The cheerful availability at 9 in the evening. The smile in the hallway the morning after a humiliating comment from a senior leader. The warmth you manufacture toward a coworker you no longer trust. None of that is in the job description. All of it is being silently demanded, enforced by the implied threat that anyone who stops performing will be labeled difficult, disengaged, or not a team player. Here's the cruelty most people feel but never articulate. The workplace rewards the person who is easiest to emotionally consume, and then calls that person positive, flexible, or great to work with. Those are not compliments. Those are receipts for a tax you have been paying without agreeing to. The defense is a deliberate return to baseline professionalism. You can do the job well without being endlessly delighted to do it. You can attend the meeting without performing enthusiasm. You can receive unfair feedback without rushing to reassure the person who gave it. You are not there to regulate everyone else's comfort while swallowing your own reaction. You are there to do the work. A professional who is merely professional is already giving the employer everything the employer actually paid for. The rest is a tax on your interior life, and the tax is optional more often than anyone admits. The seventh is the removal of the job from the center of your identity, and the invasion here is gradual enough that most people do not notice until it is well advanced. It starts with reasonable things. You care about the work, you want to do it well, you take pride in a job done properly. None of that is the problem. The problem is the moment the job stops being something you do and becomes the main source of your sense of worth. From that moment, every small fluctuation at work becomes a fluctuation in your identity. A piece of negative feedback stops being information about a task and becomes a verdict on whether you are a worthwhile person. A promotion that went to someone else stops being a scheduling decision and becomes evidence of your future. A tense meeting stops being a tense meeting and becomes the slow unraveling of the story you were using to tell yourself who you were. Your employer should not be the landlord of your identity. The moment that lease is signed, every decision the company makes is a decision about your interior life, and almost no company handles interior lives carefully enough to be trusted with that kind of access. Reclaiming identity from a job is not about hobbies, although hobbies can help. It is about widening the number of places from which you draw the sense that you are a real person. Relationships that are not mediated by professional status. Skills that do not appear on your resume. Knowledge that has no commercial application. A quiet domain of competence the workplace does not know exists and does not get to evaluate. The point is not a separate identity for display. The point is that when the workplace does eventually move against you, it is moving against one region of your life instead of all of it. A job with partial access to your sense of self can disappoint you without destroying you. A job with total access cannot even give you a mildly bad day without triggering something that feels like collapse. The eighth holds the other seven together, and it goes against the way the word peace is usually used. Peace is not a feeling. It is a system. It is a set of repeated behaviors that, over time, produce an internal environment less reactive to an external environment that remains difficult. People who wait for peace to arrive as a mood wait forever, because the mood is being generated by conditions they do not control. People who build peace as a system eventually notice that the mood follows. The behaviors come first, the emotional state arrives later, and only if the behaviors are maintained long enough to reshape the underlying patterns. The indicators are measurable, and that is part of why the framing works. Rumination decreases. The loop about yesterday's meeting no longer lasts until Friday. Recovery is faster. A bad morning no longer consumes the afternoon. Reactions shrink. Things that would once have produced a spike of anger or anxiety now produce a thinner, shorter response that passes through without staying. Clarity increases. You can tell the difference between what is actually happening and what you are telling yourself is happening. The boundaries holding your internal life together are quieter and more stable, not announced, not performed, simply in place. These are the signs. They are dull to talk about, and the dullness is part of why they work. Peace is a behavior you repeat until it becomes a room you live in. One honest thing has to be said before this ends. A system like this does not turn a bad manager into a good one. It does not transform an unfair environment into a fair one. It does not guarantee promotions, safety, or recognition. It does not shorten the time you have to stay. What it does is change the relationship between you and the environment so that the environment stops taking from you at the same rate. That is a smaller claim than the promises made by most workplace advice, and it is the only claim that is honest. The building is going to stay roughly the same until the day you can leave. The only variable you actually control is how much of yourself you are handing to it on the way. So this is the reality. You keep showing up. You do the work. You meet the deadlines. You send the emails. And underneath all of that, you are running a quieter operation, the one nobody in the building can see. You are refusing to file structural chaos under your own name. You are closing the door on emotional access. You are declining to host other people's fake urgency inside your chest. You are keeping a professional self that is real but not on display. You are managing exposure instead of waiting for fairness. You are dropping the performance that was never in the contract. You are widening your identity so the job is a region of your life instead of the whole map of it. You are building peace as a system instead of waiting for it as a feeling. The building has not changed. The manager has not changed. The workload has not changed. The person inside all of it has. You may still need the paycheck. You may still need the insurance. You may still need the visa, the reference, the runway, the time. That is the trade, and the trade is real. But the workplace does not get custody of your nervous system. It does not get to decide what you think about on the drive home. It does not get to own the 10 minutes in the shower. It does not get to sit in the chair across from you at dinner. You are still in the job. You are no longer inside the job. And when the day finally comes that you can walk out of that building for the last time, there will be something left of you that the building did not absorb. That is what you are protecting, not a feeling, a person, the one you still get to be on the other side of this.